Hello to the age of dust. First to the ice age, and yes, we're all obsessed with internal combustion engine, sold to us by all companies. Then there was a stone age, which is just a stratosphere of hippies and sandals.
That's the Stone Age.
The stone age, and then there came the age of dust, which is speaker's corner, and here to demonstrate how debate and conversation can be transcend greater than just preaching hatred at each other, and actually try to nail down the reality that we all have to experience, and how we can make that experience more rounded and more rounded and more rewarding for each human being. So the debate will be around education, but we're going to kick it off with how Biden has now just given some debt relief to students with student loans in America. So, what are your feelings first? I know you don't know too much about this student loan, but we will move into about how education should be free or not.
Okay, so I believe what you brought up is Biden relieving some student debt from some people. And I feel that education should be free to everybody as far as they can take it. But by free, what I mean is not for them not to pay, for them not to have to write a check for their education. It's not free because nothing is free, but to live in a society that functions well, I want to be surrounded by people that are competent and trained. I don't want to get into an airplane with an uneducated pilot. I want that pilot to be educated. So I think as a socialist, I'm a socialist.
You're a
So I am a socialist. Yes, I am. So as a socialist, I think that we need as a society to invest in our own future successes. So as a young child should receive a free education, so should people up through the chain. I don't think that I need to pay for somebody to go to school to learn about non-pragmatic things. I think that at some point people need to pay for their own experiences, but for the practical and pragmatic things, I think that society and government should pay for that. And I don't like the idea of turning people into commodities. We do that with healthcare, we do that with prison, and we do that with education, where we turn people from being either patients, somebody who needs to be reformed, or somebody who needs to be educated. We turn them into money-making units. And I think as a religious person and a person who's inclined to be a socialist, that's a sin. I think that we can do better as a society than to have a quid pro quo for education. I don't want to be surrounded by stupid people.
Yeah, I think you gave an intriguing analogy there a moment ago relating to the plane. I'd just like to expand upon that a bit more. Yes, you want your pilot educated, but also what's I think sometimes overlooked is that if you're the passengers on the plane with you are not educated, then it's higher likely they'll be indulging in some internal narrative of extreme nature or extreme action. A more universal education would actually and demonstrate that it's easy to demonstrate there's less war, violence, and conflict because education, I believe, one of the great rewarding qualities of it isn't just about learning facts, but it's how to learn about yourself and how to have that language. Would you agree?
Oh, I would agree, but I think that it's a multi-step process. So I think education is the first step to wisdom, and wisdom is the next step towards peace. So you can't have any of that without education. So why should we charge people? Why should a kid who's just finishing high school in America, we're talking about America, just finishing high school, who has a passion to learn, perhaps a passion to learn about being a social worker, why should they have to go into debt? Why should they have to make money for somebody else so they could try to do better for society? So they could try to improve society. In a Steve Winwood song,
Talking about education should be free.
in a Steve Winwood
Please join
song,
in if you
there's an
want.
excellent verse that says that the man in a suit has just bought a new car from the profit that he's made off of your dreams. I think that in society, we practice that too much. That's become too easy for the people in power to enrich themselves off of other people's dreams and desires. The goodness of society is reliant upon other people's or young people's dreams and desires to try to learn, to try to help, to try to be better. We should not be making money off of that.
Yeah, I think you've brought a good point up here, which is who's making all the money out of our desire to be better human beings? So, what entities out there that actually profits from this? And that entity who is doing little to no work whatsoever is profiting off a human being who's working day in day out, not just to make themselves carry on as a static human being, but actually develop and grow that human being. And as I said before, on that analogy with the plane, you want people around you on that plane to have roughly the same quality of education, because otherwise extreme thoughts are born out of prejudice and out of lack of knowledge. That's where fear and anger comes from. So we do have a person sat back making billions out of a country that wishes and desires to improve itself. So I think you probably will, and I think I know how you're going to answer this, but do you think that person should exist? I would call that person a capitalist,
I don't
obviously, because they have all the capital.
I don't know that that's a person or if it's a mechanism that a lot of people have become comfortable with and make money. If you find a way to make money, you're going to continue to go to that area, go to that place to make money. So it's not a person, it's not a movement, it's not a them. It's just kind of a thing that a lot of people get involved with to increase their profits, increase their money. Again, there's when it comes to student debt in America, a lot of that student debt is interest. As a Muslim, I don't believe in interest. I don't believe that you should have to pay interest for a loan. But we are where we are. And I think that Biden, I believe he took off $10,000 of the debt from the top. I think that they need to wipe it off. They need to wipe out student debt and go from there. There's a lot of people that can be doing other things with that money besides paying interest on a loan that they took out 40 years ago. Think of how much more productive that money would be as opposed instead of going to investors, that money going directly into society. So if I don't have to pay that X amount of money every month to some company that's made their money over and over again on me, I could take that money and go down to the corner shop and buy my kid an ice cream and help that person running that shop have a decent life. Or I could go buy a hamburger someplace or buy a pair of shoes. Or I could invest in another business. Maybe my friend wants to open a shop and needs to borrow some money from me. So that money is going someplace where it's not doing any good for society. It's going someplace into a tax haven. It's disappearing. But people are still encumbered with that debt decades after they take that loan out.
I think everything you talked about and mentioned, I completely agree with. Though I do disagree with one thing you've just said, though, which is that there isn't an entity or a philosophy that exists in our reality that doesn't deliberately take away everything from us that you have described. It is capitalism. Okay. Capitalism profoundly, capitalism is not about enterprise, not about development, growth. Because if that was true, we wouldn't have this conversation right now about communities, not what you've described very accurately about communities. If that was true, if capitalism was about growth, capitalism purely isn't about making profit either. This will startle people. Capitalism's only interest, capitalism's only interest is to make sure that all your energy, all your good ideas, all your hard work is you or your community will never profit from them. It steals, robs all the profit of all the energies of all communities in all the world. And that's why we live in a world where you can have the West, people here in England, extremely wealthy relatively, and then in another country, Africa, where those same capitalists still exist, but are using child labor, using war as a weapon of control and domination.
I don't think you can separate the two. Capitalism is successful in the West because of what it's doing in other parts of the world. We all want to drive electric cars. We don't want to see where the batteries come from. So we all want sausage. We don't want to see how it's made. So part of what happens in a large capitalist society is that we don't want to see the ugly bits that go into it. We don't want to see child labor. We don't want to see the environment being torn apart. We want to see the good stuff in that. The cool stuff, the nice stuff, the fashionable stuff. This shirt that I have here, I don't want to know about the slave kid that made it in Pakistan or Vietnam. I just want it to look cool on me and be cheap. That's capitalism.
I think capitalism denies us the ability to have a voice to say what you just said, but with political weight behind it. Because I think, actually, most people we would talk about here, meet here, or on the world, or out there in the ether and the internet, or whatever planet you're on. I reckon, whatever planet you're on, I do. Most people do hate child labour, do hate pollution, do hate the horrors which seems to be so related to the material world that we have to live in. But what capitalism does is own the media, own the education, which we'll be coming back to, don't worry, and through education and our political system, make sure that that brilliant, profound, beautiful sentiment that you have uttered and you'll be thinking in your minds is never allowed any progression further than maybe here or maybe no further than your mind. So one of the reasons why education, I believe, get back onto education, is so restrictive and not open and free as it absolutely should be. And you don't need to be a socialist, by the way, to conclude that education should be free. Is that we'd have better understanding and tools to be able to make our voice, your voice, and the thoughts in your head have real political but compassionate reasonings and conclusions to the reality around us.
I think I either was misunderstood or I misspoke when I said education should be free. It shouldn't be free. We should all invest in it and we should all reap the rewards in it. So nothing is free in society. We need to invest in our younger people. We need to invest in our universities so we can all reap the rewards. Right now, what's not happening or what's happening, I should say, is people from banks and people from lending institutions are investing, giving people student loans. They're not investing in their education. They're investing in their debt. They're turning this person into a lifelong earning commodity. And that, in my opinion, as somebody who's a socialist and somebody who's a Muslim, is a sin. We shouldn't do that. We should use the tools that we have as a society to help each other come up together and share some of that burden. We're not happy sharing the burden. We're okay with marching someplace complaining about a burned up rainforest, but we're not okay with owning some of that burden personally.
Just to clarify, I completely agree with what you said. When we say free, we don't mean it just magically appears in front of us. So, for example, the oil companies collectively, since the 1970s, have earned over £52 trillion. That money, which they illegally acquired, by the way, because you own something doesn't give you the rights to abuse it and or do carry on abusing it. At some stage, the oil companies have clearly demonstrated, even in the 70s, they knew that they were destroying the planet. So that 52 trillion still exists, by the way, and that would easily pay for education for everybody on the whole planet for an extended duration of time where we can then make sure that the wealth is clearly owned by the people that wish to improve and develop and make sure our societies work together, no matter your religion, sexuality, or philosophy, unless you're in the philosophy of murder and hurt, of course. So would you agree that the reason why, one of the main reasons why education is not so abundant or you have to pay for it is because it would give the people tools necessary to be productive and constructive human beings, not just for themselves, but for all our communities and environment?
I think a lot of what's going on right now and what we would call education would be more clearly defined as instruction. How to teach people how to go out and get a job, how to go do this, how to pay taxes. I don't think we're teaching people how to think and how to challenge and how to disagree. If people learn that, then the people at the top or the people who are collecting the money are going to be at risk. So I think that what we need to do is we need to teach people not only pragmatic skills, we need to know how to turn a wrench, we need to know how to fix a leaky faucet, but we also need to know how to question. We need to know how to question properly, we need to know how to question aggressively, and we need to know not to take some prescripted answer as the truth. We need to keep questioning. And I think that that is the key to society, hopefully, to become more successful.
Just interject when I make this statement about what you just said about risk, the people at the top. What I mean about that, and maybe my friend here means about that as well, is that you won't be at risk of threats or violence. You know, you have the house, the home, the swimming pools, probably multiple. All I believe he's saying in that moment is that making continuous, never-ending gross profit is the only thing at risk. But you'll be able to keep the multiple houses, and I mean, it looks like he's going to disagree that. But I mean, yeah, if you clearly are responsible for genocide, clearly there's a law with that. But if you're just part of a process, agency is not necessary. Agency is more harder to define there, and we're talking about trillionaires here, and so I think I would come from the point that you are allowed to keep the wealth to a certain degree, millions. I think there's nothing wrong with having millions and millions. Billions and trillions. You don't need that. Nobody needs that. Would you agree with my assessment of risk or anything else?
I agree. I think that that people should be rewarded for their hard work and the risk that they put out.
Yes.
But they should not be able to monopolize. They should not be able to victimize other people. So no, I don't think that we need to have some heads on spikes someplace. That maybe depends, but
No.
it all depends.
But I believe he's joking there. But if I'm wrong, then comment below, and maybe you can contradict me. But I definitely would never.
This will come out in the trial.
I would definitely never. Violence is you're only becoming the thing that you despise when violence is a tool you're using.
No violence. I believe in humanity. I believe in our kindness is more than I believe in the way things are now. I think we're in a weird place, and I think we're not in the best place that we can be. I think we could be in a better place. Obviously, philosophically and theologically, I have an opinion about it. But the way that the world is now is, I think we're in a lot of trouble. I think we're in a dangerous place, and I think a lot of it has to do with the way that capitalism is handled and misused.
Yeah.
I think that we do get crumbs from people, and somehow we become addicted to those crumbs, thinking that we're going to have the whole loaf one day, when it's not designed or it hasn't evolved for that to happen that way. Very few people make it.
Yeah, and I think the reason try and keep the theme on education. By the way, I know we both of us are going on tangents, but we should we'll keep education. And the thing is with education is that you can be, if you are of the right education, you can now become a judge or an MP or a scientist or other leader in a community or society. And normally what happens in the West, by the way, is that if you're not from a certain background and wealth, you are an education, then you will never be allowed into the facets of what I call a democracy. You'll never be allowed into that. Education is the way you peacefully, respectfully, humanely break down these doors, and without revolution. Terrible idea. Without revolution, but a process, organic, intelligent, creative, and compassionate to every human being on this planet. Of course, there is going to be some kickback initially, of course, but most people who live at the top are not aware of the horrors that they're educated to be blind to the horrors that they are a part of. And as I said, most people should keep their wealth. But do you see how education is so tied into moving into the positions of power from any background?
In a weird way, education seems to be tied in with social mobility. and we educate our people, or we teach our kids, the smarter you are, the more money you'll make. The more money you make, the more powerful you are. But what about just the beauty of being educated? The more educated you are, the more altruistic you are. The more that you can help other people with your resources if you become more educated. And that's what I feel should be the motive behind education. But I also think that people should never stop asking questions. And I think that the way that the education system is set up in the West, in America, is where I was educated, is to teach us things, to teach us facts, or to get us to pass tests, but not to teach us how to think, not to teach us how to question, not to make it wrong, to make it bad to make mistakes. We should be encouraged to make mistakes, because how else are we going to learn?
I think what you're describing there is education also means that you can no longer be a slave. There's no such thing as an educated slave, because the educated slave transcends this gross constraint that was enforced upon him, her, or that community. And through education, they can transcend that and what I call become a human being and demonstrate your worth, quality, each according to his ability and her ability to, or your ability to give to positively to the communities that we all have to live in, and education helps that. Do you see what I'm saying there?
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%.
So, just what would you like to see as a solution? The first step solution, not a solution to all life's problems throughout education, but if you have that, we'd all love to hear it.
Okay.
But just a first step solution that we could all take with us to this idea of education, making it more abundant.
I think equal education should be available to everybody, regardless of their financial status, regardless of how much money their family makes, or regardless of what neighborhood they live in. I grew up in part of my life. I grew up in inner city Los Angeles, and then part of my life I grew up in the suburbs of Los Angeles. Two completely separate areas, two completely different paths of education. Why can't they be the same? Because of a zip code, or here you would call a postcode? That's not right. We shouldn't be able to do that in society. The kid in Beverly Hills should have the same education as the kid in Compton, and vice versa.
So I think I'll actually make a couple more points before just signing off.
Okay.
I think what I'm getting here is we're educated to be divided, not educated to be of understanding. And also, we're educated to see that wealth means how much numbers you have in your bank account, rather than what you were saying, this wealth of understanding of knowledge, interrogation of the world around us, and the development and creativity that can help transform each problem that arises in the material world.
The only thing I would disagree with you on in that is that we're not educated to do that. We're trained to do that and believe that we're being educated.
Yes, that's what I was trying to say, but he said it much better.
Well, thank you so much.
Well, did you introduce yourself, by the way?
My name is Patrick.
Yes, sorry for not introducing you. This is my second, well, not my second and third attempt to try and give to you a cohesive interview from Speaker's Corner. So it's a learning process for me. So forgive me for my gross incompetence.
Thank you for using me as your lab rat. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Subject.
I thank you for all the energy and thoughts and give. And is any last thoughts, not on this subject, just about thoughts about the universe we can give to the world?
Be kind to each other. Find somebody who is not doing as good as you, and be kind to them.
Beautiful. And we'll leave it on that one. Thank you ever so much.
Yay, we did it. All right.
Thank you.
All right, brother.
And on that, I'm signing off.
Take care.
Thank you.
How'd I do?
Oh, you were absolutely off.